She was a vision. Platinum blonde hair cascading like silk, one eye playfully hidden beneath a curtain of waves. America didn't just fall in love with her, it copied her, idolized her, made her a trend. Soldiers painted her face on bomber planes. Women lined up in salons asking for the Veronica Lake. She wasn't just an actress. She was a fantasy. But fantasies don't get to speak. Behind the velvet image, Veronica Lake was unruly, sharp-tongued, and fiercely independent, traits that Hollywood couldn't mold. Her studio branded her difficult, directors whispered about her instability, and soon, the dream turned on itself. She went from commanding the screen to waiting tables for strangers, her iconic hair now tied back, forgotten. And when she died, in a tiny motel room, broke and alone, no one in Hollywood showed up. She had the look that defined a decade. But it was a look that buried the woman underneath. This is the untold story of Veronica Lake. In 1941, she slipped onto the screen like a ghost in satin. Veronica Lake, born Constance Frances Marie Ockelman, wasn't just beautiful. She was enigmatic. Hollywood had seen its share of blondes, but Lake was different. She moved like smoke. Spoke like a sigh. And that peekaboo hairstyle, with one eye hidden beneath a wave of hair, wasn't a gimmick. It was a revolution. She became an instant obsession. When I Wanted Wings hit theaters, audiences didn't just watch her, they memorized her. The studios took notice. Paramount launched a publicity campaign with her image at the center, icy, unattainable, untouchable. In a sea of actresses, she became a myth. Her face, porcelain pale, framed by liquid gold, appeared on posters, billboards, and barracks. During World War II, Veronica Lake became a morale icon. Her photo was painted on aircrafts. Her voice was heard on the radio, in public war bond campaigns. For a moment, she wasn't just an actress. She was the face of the American dream. The press called her the peekaboo girl. The queen of cool. Hollywood's most alluring mystery. And the studios packaged her accordingly. She was cast in noir thrillers that played to her detached allure, This Gun for Hire, The Glass Key, The Blue Dahlia. Her co-stars, Alan Ladd, Frederick March, often looked up at her with awe, never dominance. Veronica never played the damsel. She was always in control, or at least, that's how it looked. In truth, she was barely in control of herself. But that wasn't what the public saw. They saw gowns, cameras, champagne. They saw a woman who could freeze time with a single glance. And they believed she was exactly who the studio said she was. What they didn't know, what they weren't meant to know, was that Veronica Lake didn't like being looked at. That the hairstyle which made her famous had become a curse. That the studio gave her a new name, new backstory, and stripped away her real self until only the illusion remained. Still, she played the role. She smiled. She posed. She let the world believe she was born to be a star. But even in her prime, the cracks were showing. She wasn't warm. She didn't flirt at press junkets. She didn't charm directors off camera. She wasn't cooperative. And in Hollywood, that meant only one thing, temporary. But in the 1940s, none of that mattered yet. Back then, Veronica Lake was lightning in a bottle, a frozen dream, a cinematic spell cast on a war-weary nation. She made the impossible look effortless. And for a while, she wore the crown of Hollywood royalty, even as it cut into her skin. It shattered something inside her. The trauma didn't soften her. It hardened her. She drank. She lashed out. She withdrew. She lost another child later in life. And slowly, the image of Veronica Lake became more and more separated from the woman who had to live underneath it. Worse, the very thing that made her famous, that signature hairstyle, became a source of danger. During the war, Women working in factories began imitating her peekaboo bangs, which led to accidents with machinery. The government asked her to publicly change her style. She agreed. And almost overnight, her popularity began to fade. She'd been built on an illusion. And once the illusion cracked, so did the fantasy. And so did she. No one saw the little girl still grieving her father. No one saw the young mother mourning a child she barely held. No one saw the woman with a real illness trying to survive in a world that only wanted her pretty. Hollywood didn't ask how she felt. It asked how she looked. And once her looks were no longer useful, the silence grew louder. This was the side of Veronica Lake no magazine covered. The one curled up in dressing rooms with a bottle. The one who stared at herself in the mirror and wondered what was real. The one who forgot where the mask ended, and the girl began. Before she became Veronica Lake, before the gaze of a million eyes turned her into myth, she was just Connie. A girl with a difficult name, a broken home, and a mother chasing stardom for a child who didn't ask for it. Constance Frances Marie Ockelman was born in Brooklyn in 1922. Her father, Harry, was a ship crewman who died in an oil tanker explosion when she was just 10. It left a mark, not just on her heart, but on her identity. Her mother remarried quickly and pushed Connie into finishing school, then into modeling, then into acting. It wasn't love. It was strategy. Her beauty wasn't nurtured, it was leveraged. By her teens, Connie was quiet, introverted, and guarded, often described as aloof. In reality, she was uncomfortable, forced into a world of auditions, lights, and mirrors, where no one asked what she wanted. Her striking features and shy demeanor were misread as mystery. Studios took notice. And when someone suggested the name Veronica Lake, she accepted it like a mask. But the mask came with rules. She had to smile. Had to seduce. Had to disappear into a persona built for other people's fantasies. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, she was struggling with mental health, long before Hollywood had words for it. Mood swings. Isolation. Explosive arguments. Today, it might be called bipolar disorder. Back then, it was called difficult. There were whispers on sets, about her temper, her lateness, her inability to follow direction. But few stopped to ask why. Few considered what it meant to grow up under pressure, groomed for fame, robbed of choice. Her marriage to art director John Detley at age 19 was a quiet rebellion, and a desperate attempt to find control. But fame was already devouring her. While pregnant with their first child, she slipped on a lighting cable on set, and delivered her son prematurely. He died within days. Veronica Lake didn't rise to fame, she was manufactured for it. From the moment she walked into Paramount Studios, she was told who to be: sultry, silent, small. At just 4 feet 11 inches, the studio played up her petite frame, cast her beside shorter actors, adjusted camera angles to make her seem ethereal. But what they couldn't frame, what they couldn't fix, was her resistance. She didn't giggle on cue. She didn't flirt with executives. She didn't charm the press with rehearsed anecdotes. She was intelligent, sarcastic, and frequently bored by Hollywood's games. So they reshaped her. They changed her name to Veronica, elegant, mysterious, and paired it with Lake, to evoke stillness, depth, something unreachable. They gave her a backstory: the aloof blonde, the femme fatale, the woman who haunted the screen with nothing but a look. They gave her co-stars, wardrobe, and rehearsed answers. They gave her rules. And they expected her to obey. But Veronica had her own rules. She challenged directors. She clashed with producers. She questioned authority, in an era when women, especially beautiful ones, were expected to obey. The studios responded with pressure. Then punishment. They refused her script preferences. They leaked rumors. They weaponized her image against her, labeling her difficult, unstable, and ungrateful. By the mid-40s, her contracts became tighter, her roles thinner. The Veronica Lake brand, once electric, was now seen as volatile. And still, she tried to play the game. She took on more noir roles, often playing women twisted by love or guilt, characters eerily close to her real self. She married again, to director André de Toth, and had children. To the press, it was a reinvention, a second chance. But behind the scenes, she was unraveling. Her drinking worsened. Her behavior grew more erratic. She disappeared from sets. Showed up late. Forgot lines. Executives no longer whispered, they dismissed her outright. Once the studios had chiseled her into perfection, they saw every crack as a flaw, not as a wound, but as evidence of failure. And when Veronica needed grace, they gave her exit. Her contract wasn't renewed. Her name disappeared from posters. By 1950, she was no longer welcome in the town she helped shape. In a desperate bid for reinvention, she turned to television. Then stage. Then writing. In 1969, she released a memoir, Veronica, the autobiography of Veronica Lake. It was honest, scathing, painful, a plea to be seen as something more than hair and cheekbones. But it was too late. The machine had already moved on. Marilyn. Audrey. Liz. New faces. New fantasies. Veronica Lake was a ghost. So she vanished. She worked as a cocktail waitress in Manhattan under a fake name. She lived in anonymity, pulling drinks for men who once had her poster on their wall. Some recognized her. Most didn't. She didn't correct them. Because the truth was, she wasn't even sure who she was anymore. Veronica Lake had become a role she couldn't stop playing. A legend she was never allowed to outgrow. A myth built by others, that buried the woman underneath. She didn't transform herself for fame. She was transformed by force, by fear, by contracts and cameras and scripts. And when the world no longer needed the myth, they discarded the woman, with no idea how much of her had been real. There was a time when the world couldn't look away. In the early 1940s, Veronica Lake was everywhere. Her films were box office gold. This Gun for Hire made her a noir icon. The Glass Key cemented her chemistry with Alan Ladd. By the time The Blue Dahlia premiered, she was more than a star, she was a silhouette burned into the national imagination. She stood on red carpets draped in silk, her hair a shimmering veil. The flashbulbs worshipped her. Critics compared her to Garbo. Fans wrote letters by the thousands. Paramount called her the most photographed woman in the world. She was on top. And she was utterly alone. Behind the silver screen magic was a woman unraveling in silence. Her first marriage ended in bitterness. Her second, with director André de Toth, began as hope, and quickly fell into chaos. They fought. She drank. He cheated. She threw things. He disappeared for days. Together, they had children. But even motherhood couldn't anchor her. By 1948, her name was poisoned to studios. Not because she lacked talent. But because she had become unpredictable, uncontrollable, and worst of all, unprofitable. Her mental health spiraled. Her alcoholism worsened. At one point, she was arrested for public intoxication. In another incident, she was found passed out in a hotel lobby, her name unrecognized by the staff. The woman who once epitomized elegance was now the subject of tabloids and pity. She attempted comebacks. Stage plays. Low-budget films. But the magic was gone, or rather, Hollywood had decided it was. Veronica Lake was too complicated, too human, in an industry that thrived on illusion. And then came the final exile. With no offers, no income, and a reputation she couldn't outrun, Veronica slipped away from the public eye. She vanished into cheap motels, small towns, dead-end jobs. Her beauty faded. Or so they said. In truth, she was still striking. But now, it was the wrong kind of striking, the kind that reminded people of what they lost, what they ignored, what they ruined. At the height of her fame, she had once earned $4,500 a week. By the 1960s, she was scrubbing hotel toilets to pay rent. She worked under an alias. Slept in cheap rooms. Ate alone. Sometimes, she'd be recognized, a guest would squint, smile, ask, "Weren't you?" She'd nod, maybe. Or just walk away. She didn't beg for attention. She didn't sue anyone. She didn't blame the world out loud. But the pain was visible. The woman who once lit up black and white frames with a single glance had now become a footnote in Hollywood's history, referenced in style books, forgotten in hearts. Her story should have ended differently. With a grand return. With awards. With redemption. But that wasn't the price she paid. Her price was quiet. Humiliating. Invisible. And in a cruel twist, the world continued to adore Veronica Lake. The image, the haircut, the myth, while the woman behind it slowly disappeared. Because in Hollywood, legends don't die. They just become easier to remember than the truth. She died quietly. Alone. In a small Vermont hospital on July 7, 1973. Veronica Lake was just 50 years old. The cause, hepatitis and acute renal failure, the final blows of a body long ravaged by addiction and neglect. She had no fortune, no mansion, no headlines. No star-studded tribute. The woman once idolized by millions slipped into death the same way she had slipped out of fame, unnoticed. She was cremated. Her ashes scattered off the coast of the Virgin Islands, as she had requested. There was no ceremony. No monument. The press ran obituaries, brief and polite. Few former colleagues commented. Hollywood moved on. But something strange happened in the years that followed. Film students discovered her. Feminist critics re-evaluated her. Fashion icons cited her as a muse. Directors whispered her name when casting their icy heroines. And that hairstyle, that infamous peekaboo wave, never truly disappeared. It shows up on red carpets. In Vogue editorials. In nostalgic homages that rarely credit the woman who wore it best. Veronica Lake was more than a haircut. More than a myth. She was a warning. A reminder that behind every fantasy is a person. That beauty can be a prison. That silence, especially in women, is often mistaken for peace. She didn't vanish. She became a whisper. A shadow in the golden light. A halo that Hollywood forgot.